rocking with Texas!
He's a 10.
I choose this family.
Hey guys, and welcome to episode 49 of 911 Lone Star Roundup. I'm one of your hosts, EJ. I know I don't sound it. I'm sick. And with me are my lovely co-hosts, Katie.
Hi, guys.
And Grace.
Hi, everyone.
Today, we're going to be talking about the best, the worst, the interesting, the most karma scenes, episodes. It's going to be a mishmash inspired by TJ. On our Discord server, we asked for some suggestions since we have a free episode. And so we've kind of broken them down into a few different categories. And I think we're going to have some fun chatting and laughing about some of these. So
It'll
get to
chaos.
it. Yeah,
It's complete chaos. Like this is fun because like we don't usually like plan our episodes like this, so we kind of planned this earlier in the week and kind of was like, okay, like we're gonna make it into categories and not just do like calls that like were kind of unrealistic or not like the best or could be improved. We wanted to like do multiple categories, and it was just fun like planning it out and then getting to this point, of course. And like remember everyone, there are a lot of seasons to go through, so we do not have every episode or scene that fits into these categories. Y'all can like leave a review or a comment talking about what your opinions are. Wink. But these are just ones we thought of.
Right. And you can always message us on our Discord server or even on any of our social media, and we'll keep track of them. And maybe in the future we'll do another episode because we'll have more Lone Star and 911 episodes to talk about too. So we could always add it to our next episode of it.
And we were doing like cold remembering. We weren't even watching any episodes and trying to keep track of them. We were just like, okay, what can we think of off our heads? Right, because that's like going through like 7 and a half maybe seasons between the two
basically,
shows.
Yeah, so we've got a little bit of content to deal with.
Chaos, as I said.
And I think the most of our stuff is actually season 1 to 4 of 911 and season 1 and 2 of Lone Star, except there's one from season 2 or season 3 thus far. So maybe our next time we do it, we'll focus more on season 5 and 3, depending on what we can come up with. Yeah, but I think we should get started. And I think we're going to start with kind of, start with the negative one first, the saddest rescues or scenes from, we have quite a few.
This list which is growing.
Yeah.
This just proves that we're in touch with our emotions. That's all I gotta say. Not even like a bad thing. Like I don't even like see these as being like super negative. Like I think it just shows that like we like sad things sometimes.
Right.
Oh yeah. And remember, the brain holds on to the negative more than it does the positive, like literally scientifically proven. So of course we're able to come up with the saddest.
Right. So and these are not in any order of like what we think is like the most saddest or anything like that. So one of them is Lone Star. So in Lone Star episode 104, when the house collapses and the dad and the 2 kids are inside, the dad manages to get out. The kids are still stuck in there, and so dad is like frantically like waiting for them to rescue the kids. Owen comes out finally with the kids, and then throughout that whole time of the dad like worrying about his kids, as soon as he sees his kids and hugs them, then the dad collapses and ended up having had some internal bleeding throughout the whole day, which he wasn't being treated for, and he ends up passing away right in front of the kids and everybody that was the onlookers. That was a really sad scene, and it was emotional for a lot of reasons, because that was a big one for TK too. Like Owen, the house had collapsed again while Owen was in there, so TK was worried about his dad and the kids losing their dad. So yeah, that was definitely a sad scene.
That was so sad. It was so sad. Like that's one of the scenes like probably like one of the top ones that really stands out of like sadness. Like it's just like I don't know, like it still even hits like now.
Yeah, it's just... and that was only the 4th episode of Lone Star too. That wasn't even like they hadn't even been established. I mean, they had been, but it was early on, which was is sometimes crazy because a lot of times they try not to do super sad or super like positive like scenes. Sometimes I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying.
Yeah, honestly, I just remembered this, but like that just episode 4 in general, I feel like there were a lot of sad things that happened in
Yeah.
that episode. Like that was when TK found out about Owen's cancer and found out he was like basically hiding it from him. That's like when that like a lot of things like unraveled in that episode. And it's just like, oh damn.
But like that
Um,
was also an episode where they really made their mark as a show
Mhm.
because they made it hard hitting. They weren't skirting around,
yeah, it's
you know,
true.
trying to play safe. They were like, okay, yeah, we're a spinoff, but guess what? We're our own show and you're gonna listen to us. And that's kind of where they took it.
And then the next sad scene rescue was the gay gentleman in the season 2 of 911. One had been pinned to the fence between a car and the fence, and he ends up passing away. And the other one ends up passing away too. And it was really hard for Buck and Eddie and Bobby, all because they had responded to the call. And that one was a really tough one because the show had started with them kind of getting the montage of their life together, and then so like the build up to them, and then the one that had survived initially had telling Buck, he's like, you don't find a relationship, you make it, because Buck was saying that he like wanted a relationship like they had.
Right, yeah, that was sad. And looking back at that scene like many seasons later, you're just like, okay, buddy. Yeah,
Right,
I'm sorry.
right. I know. Yeah, I was
That's
gonna
pretty
say
acclaimed as like a wait, buddy.
Well, and
thing.
especially because Buck was working on the guy trying to like resuscitate him, the second gentleman that passed away. And then, the way Eddie just like kind of is calmly standing there, and then he like puts his hand on Buck's shoulder, and yeah, it was tough.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely saw buddy vibes from that.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And just like that was huge because Buck was like seeing what the result of like a real relationship, like something real could look like. And so, the second guy basically curled up beside his partner and died. And
He said he'd rather wouldn't want to live without him.
Exactly.
And
And so they both went around the same time. And honestly, this is so weird because in a weird way, it's one of my feel goods will be one of the saddest at the same time.
Right.
Just because they did such a beautiful job with that scene episode-ish concept. Like they just did so good with that.
Yeah.
But it's so freaking sad.
And then in season 3 of 911, we have Hen when she hit the young girl with the ambulance when Hen had switched the light, but the light never switched. So this girl plowed or drove through the intersection, and at the same time Hen was going through there and hits her, and then the girl ends up passing away.
That was so sad.
Oh yeah.
That was so sad.
And then Hen's reaction was like spot on. Like she truly was emotional, and I'm like, yeah, it was huge.
Yeah. Honestly, her reaction, I think, is what makes it most sad. Like, obviously, the girl dying is very sad, but like seeing Hen's reaction and then seeing Athena show up for Hen is literally like the most perfect thing. Like, it shows their friendship, but also it's just so sad, like seeing that. And then, like, after these episodes, like seeing like how she's dealing and stuff is so hard too.
Yeah, like just generally, we get so much Hen content just with the storyline, and I love it. But like the entire concepts, it's so sad. And it's weird because the girl who died was younger than all of us. She was only 16, I think.
Oh yeah,
and so
I
it's
completely forgot about that.
It's sad whenever anyone passes, but the younger they are, the harder it is.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
Well, Hen felt guilty, and she like started second guessing herself as to whether or not she really did hit the button, because it's such second nature to flip the switch, and like so she couldn't like 100% for sure say she actually did. And they're like, are you sure you mean that? And so there's a lot of like just seeing a first responder go through the investigation of like making sure, or like what they did and like why they did what they did to make sure that they didn't do anything wrong was crazy and sad, because through that and keeps having to rehash and relive that moment over and over again every time she talks about it.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And it's such a reminder, because if you think about it, think of everything you do in a day that's so second nature that when you think on it, you cannot actually remember if you did it or not.
Right.
because it's just so ingrained. It's muscle
Yeah.
memory.
Yeah.
And
It's
then you
just
think back and you're like, I have no idea actually.
right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then they'll, and they basically said, you got to come up with a decision as to whether or not you really did or not. Like, as in, you have to know for sure, because you can't like say one time you think you did, and then the next time you say, oh, I don't think I did.
And like, I think in the episode they filmed it as we see her flip the switch,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't know. And
Right.
eventually they figured out, it's not her fault. Like,
Right.
it was just simply a
It
signal
was
or
a
something like
glitch
that.
in the system. Yeah.
It was a glitch in the system, but that's still hard to get over the guilt. So, but
Mhm.
just this initial scene, the initial episode, heart-wrenching.
Right.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And then in Lone Stars 201, we get the tank, the father taking the tank and basically wanting to go attack the VA hospital in there in Austin, because his daughter, who'd been in the military and had been denied care by that facility for the struggle she had, and I think she had committed suicide recently, so he was blaming the VA hospital for not treating her. And so just the reasons behind it were sad. And then just the breakdown of like Owen talking to him and kind of sharing some of his story about 9/11, and those who have even to this day like struggling with health challenges because they were there on 9/11, and like have cancer now and other medical issues because of being there, was just, I don't know, I thought it was a really sad storyline, and but eye-opening too for a lot of people.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I saw something about 7,000 troops died in like Afghanistan, like the wars there, but like 30,000 died via suicide after the wars. And if you think about that, it's just staggering. And so, that scene is really hard, but then when you think about the numbers of how much something similar to that happened, that's hard.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of it too is, in the military, you're trained to just like follow orders, do what you're supposed to do, and move on. So it took a long time for them to start recognizing that a lot of these people, men and women coming back from these war zones, were struggling with PTSD or PTSI, as we, come to call it, from the things they've seen and done. Like, those aren't normal things. Like, you don't go over to a war zone and like some of the things that they were doing was not anything that they would do in like normal life.
Yeah.
And so how do you, like, not everybody wrestles with it the same. And there's
Yeah,
even soldiers. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I just pulled up the article because I was like, I just want to double check my numbers. And I was right because estimated 30,177 active duty and veterans, mostly veterans, died by suicide since 9/11, compared with 7,057 who were killed in the war itself.
Yeah.
And I think the veterans account for 22,261 of those suicides. And this was an article from June this past year.
And but I'm really glad that it's starting to be more widely recognized that there's mental health issues with these veterans, and that these veterans are not just robots. They're not just going to come home and go back to normal life like it's no big deal, like there's nothing that they are bringing back. There is a huge transition, and it's becoming more of the forefront, and it understood and expected that it's okay to have mental health issues and to talk about it and to get help. And
well, I'm glad we're doing this negative stuff at the beginning, because this is getting super depressing.
Which is, yes, I'm glad we are too, because there's like, we're only about halfway through our list.
Yeah.
Not even that. So buckle up, everybody.
And so our next one we have listed here. So in the tsunami, when Maddie is on the phone with the guy, and he's a climber, and he's stuck in the attic of his house and he can't get out. He's trying everything he can to get out to get out of the flooding house, and he can't do it. That one was a tough one.
Especially tough since I knew that actor from like other shows too, because my friend and I were like, oh my god, like, okay, it's him.
He seems familiar. I don't know if I've seen him anywhere, if he just has one of those faces, but I love his acting for like the 5-10 minutes he had in the show, with that. It was very impactful, and I cannot watch that scene without crying, and so often I skip that scene because it's just like, he tries so hard to get out, but he can't.
I know.
And you have your own reaction watching that scene, but then you're also watching Maddie's reaction, and oh my gosh, yeah, truly one of the saddest parts in the series for me.
Well, and I think even because we've seen it in other calls too, where like they've had to and I think it was in the tsunami, now that I think about it, the other lady that's in there, not Sue, can't remember her name.
Linda?
Yeah, when she was on a call and she kept trying to get somebody to respond, and it had been like 5 minutes, and like I think Josh had to come over and like end her call because
No,
she wasn't.
Sue did.
Sue, yeah. So she, it was just a, and that's when I think Sue asked Maddie to kind of triage the people on the floor, because they were, this was an emotional moment and people were just taking it, it was hitting them, and just in general, like the calls they get,
because so many ended the same way that Linda's and Maddie's did.
And you're never supposed to hang up on somebody in the middle of a call, but at some point you have to say like, okay, have they passed away, and so you need to kind of think about that. And so it's a struggle that every call center I'm sure struggles with at times.
I can literally recite the dialogue from that. I'm just going to give it a brief rundown. It was like Linda was like, they're still on the line, we're not supposed to cut off the line. And so Sue did for her, and then she came up with Maddie and she's like, waterproof phones, you can keep the line on for at least 30 minutes. And it's true. And that person's long dead by those 30 minutes are up. So yeah, good. It's double-edged sword, blessing and a curse, waterproof phones.
Right. Great in an emergency, but sometimes not so great. And then in season 1, I think it was season 1. Yeah,
it was.
Yeah,
it was when
last episode, I think.
Yeah, the father had splurged and bought himself a motorcycle and all the bells and whistles, and then I think he misses a stoplight or something, and he ends up getting cut in half.
He was distracted by impressing a chick in the car next to him.
Yeah.
And I forget exactly how it happened, but he was in the intersection and got hit by a car. And he gets torn in half.
Yeah,
literally full on 100% in half.
This is the reason why. This is it. Why I hate motorcycles. Not to mention
their nickname is donor cycles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my dad had one. I don't know if he had it when I was born and he got rid of it shortly after, or what the story was, but my mom made him get rid of it. I'm totally dead serious. She made him get rid of it and stuff, and this is obviously 26, 20 whatever years ago. And so my mom's always just had a hatred for motorcycles, and then every time you hear about somebody getting an accident, it's so sad, and most of the time it's not even person driving the motorcycle's fault. It's always other cars, 90% of the time, probably.
I mean, I've heard of getting decapitated from motorcycle crashes. I think my mom, when she was a cop, had to deal with a rescue that was somebody who was cut in half because I think they went over wiring, and that's what they did. And I know someone, acquaintances of ours had someone in their family die because they were riding their bikes on a wet day and it slid and something malfunctioned with the helmet and died from a head injury. They're truly death traps.
They are.
Yeah, they are. Never getting on one.
And it's me, where I live, I do have to commute on the highway, and just seeing these motorcycles driving down this, the interstate at 60 plus miles an hour. And I've seen them especially in congested traffic. I've seen them zip around and in between cars, which is illegal, even for, you're not supposed to do that, but they do because they're small enough, they can. And next thing you know, somebody could turn or merge and not see them, and you get flat as a pancake on the road.
People forget, you get into a car accident, you have metal around you. You're on a motorcycle, you have nothing between you and whatever hits you.
Yeah.
I've reviewed scenarios for this in my CPR course that I took, my first aid CPR AD course I took over the fall, and anyway, this could get way into a deep
I know,
discussion,
this is one thing I could rant on for ages. The motorcycles just drive me nuts.
Yeah, like a lot of people I see driving them, very responsible. But when you see those who aren't being responsible and you're like,
Yeah.
do you have a sense of your immortality?
Yeah.
Right. And most states require somebody who's driving a motorcycle to have taken the motorcycle training course. Like you can't just get a motorcycle and go drive it. You have to have a
Yeah.
special license.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure it's like that everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
which would make total sense because
Yeah.
like you shouldn't be allowed to have like a standard license for that.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And then so kind of moving on from that, we also have in season 1. So this will be earlier in season 1. We have, I'm gonna flip from our notes, but the plane crash, season 1, episode 4 was a tough one.
Yes.
And not only did we have quite a few tough calls from there, we also got Bobby having some impact, which led to him needing to ask for help. Literally, like he fell off the wagon, he got drunk.
Yeah.
Hen and Buck had to come over and sober him up.
Yeah, like remember that like Hannah had a key because they had like said if something happened that they would like give each other keys or whatever.
Yeah.
And like just the whole thing with that is like they knew nothing, like barely anything about him at that point
Yeah.
and stuff, like to the point where they were like he has like no pictures in his house, like you don't even know like if he has a family or anything.
Right. And there's a bare table completely set for 4 people.
Because
And
he'd
it
been
was,
living with his ghost that night.
yeah.
Right? Yeah. Bobby season 1 just gives a whole other vibe. Like
Yeah.
still like in a good way, but like it's just so sad like looking back to see where he was then to like where he
Yeah.
is now
Mhm.
currently in season 5.
Yeah.
Oh yes. True.
Right. And then I think, that's sometimes the hardest thing to do is to ask for help. So the fact that like they're like, you just have to ask, and he's like, okay, I'm asking help. And I thought is super emotional, super like, and I think it was shocking because Buck was still a probationary firefighter at that time.
Yeah.
So here the captain that he's been looking up to his entire career is now asking for help because of stuff going on. And I think it really sobered Buck in a way that he hadn't been, and then, with the plane crash, Bobby had rescued that mom who'd been trapped, and her son had been taken off the plane earlier. And Bobby was like, nope, we're going to get you out of here. And like, he struggled to like the last second to get that mom out so she could be reunited with her son. And then also Maddie, no, not Maddie, Abby got a call from a guy on the plane, and he'd asked if all the calls were recorded, and she said yeah. And so he leaves basically a loving message to his wife, who we find out is pregnant, and he ends up dying in the crash. So prior to the crash, he realized they were going down and called and left this message, which is something that has been mentioned in stories from people of 9/11, that many people, once they realized what was happening with the planes, they made those last second calls to their families, to answering machines, to 911 servers, to record a final message to their family. So it was really like emotional to have that happen. And then, to find out Abby calling Buck and asking him to look for this guy, and turning out that he'd been put in the black tent, which is the tent for dead people. And having to call the man's wife, have her come in and listen to it. And you can see she's heavily pregnant. And and so that was a tough one. That was a tough call.
Yeah.
And it affected Abby even.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like that scene completely gives me like feelings of 9/11 just because of like the whole like calls thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
oh my god.
And then and it really impacted Buck because that was like his first major disaster as a firefighter.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
he was struggling with that, and just like picking himself back up after that.
Yeah.
And then kind of going along with disasters is in one, well, like it kind of happened at the end of 109, but it was more 110 when Grace gets the call from the space station.
Well, actually, we didn't really know what the call was at 109, so I wouldn't even say it was in 109. I would say it was more in 110, just because we didn't really know like any of the background information on the call. But yeah, that was so sad, especially like the way like Grace kind of like was like crying listening to him talk to his daughter, and then like Grace going home and telling Judd about it.
Yeah. Well, and it was unexpected. Like she gets this random call, and then like when Guy thinks he's calling Houston, and she's like, "Oh, I'll patch you things." Like, no. like, how is she gonna patch him into like NASA? So he had gotten disconnected through the solar flare.
Right.
And the flare, unfortunately, when it went past them, shot a whole bunch of radiation into the space station, which meant
Yeah.
that all of the guys up there were going to die from radiation poisoning.
In fact, you can
And
tell he's basically the only survivor at that point.
yeah. And it was just chills. And then, like, at the end of the episode, when Grace is sitting outside looking up at the kind of the aurora borealis that you're seeing, and then like telling Judd like she got to talk to somebody from up there, and
He's confused at first. He's like, "Oh, I think we all did," and she's like, no, actually, I did."
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just, heartbreaking because, she's, tries her best. She finally ends up calling the family. Like once he, tells her, he's like, you can, this is 911. Well, I have an emergency and, I want to talk to my family. And so she's able to connect them, thankfully, but she has to stay online and listen to it all. I don't know how I'd have done that.
I'd be crying with them.
Yeah, really.
Oh,
Let's be
yes.
real.
I was honestly like during that scene.
Oh yeah,
I was.
100%.
And I'm very hard to make cry, honestly,
Oh yeah,
during
same.
scenes. Especially if I've
Mhm.
already watched an episode. If I've watched an episode already, I'm not likely to cry during the same scenes. But that scene gets me.
Yeah.
It's one of those scenes.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And then speaking of Judd, our kind of one of our last ones here on the list, which again, like we said, there's tons of other episodes and scenes that definitely are emotional, but these are what we have so far. Is the pilot episode dealing with Judd. Through the whole episode, Judd had been very pig-headed, stubborn when it came to like being at the station, and he was mad about how Owen was, he basically got to a point where he was saying that, Owen was erasing all the guys because they'd thrown away all the flowers and stuff from the memorial. And he finally like basically told Owen off and storms out of there. But as he does, he looks up on the wall and he sees the memorial wall that Owen had put up. And he just like breaks down because he sees the pictures of his fallen brothers and sisters. And he finally cracked. Like this whole time he'd been kind of like numb and in shock, and he finally like cracks. I don't know. It was good to see him break, because I was like, at first I was not a fan of Judd because of his attitude.
No, he was a little bit of an asshole, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, yes, but honestly, I didn't even see it that way because I was just like, he was going through all the stages of grief. Like he was definitely
Yeah.
angry at first when we first met him, but like I was like, oh no, he'll come around. Like, yeah, he's angry, but like it's also like valid. Not
Right.
Oh
that
yes,
like
it was definitely
for-
valid.
but like it was just like I don't know. But then like this scene is like why? Like when I saw this scene, I was just like, okay, I like this man. I really like
Yeah.
this man.
I
Like
do. Yeah. And I even loved it like as Owen like kind of followed him out, and he's like, yeah, this is the first thing I did when I rebuilt the 252 in New York, and I put it up so every time we go out, we're remembering who we're going out for. And just the conversation they had about, the PTSI versus PTSD. And yeah. And then like as he's like trying to like process and like listen to what Owen's saying, then Colleen coming in with her daughter Mabel, and with the cookies and stuff. So like Jed kind of clearing, taking that face off and talking with them, and then the encouragement that Colleen gave them about love what you did with the place because it was needing an uplift or a facelift.
This place was so depressing.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what she said. Like, oh, so depressing. And Judge just like, okay.
Right.
And Owen's like, see?
Right. Yeah. So I felt like that was like a good icebreaker in a way to give Judd kind of that boost back up, to see that, change is okay. And they weren't forgetting who the original 126 were, which can be an easy fear. Like you don't want to move on without remembering who you're moving on from. And yeah, that was a tough one. I mean, I can't imagine what Judd was feeling though, because like he was the sole survivor of a tragedy like that. Like I'm sure he's still and is going to forever continue to carry survivor's guilt from it. Like,
yeah,
why
definitely.
me?
Yeah. Like obviously, like I think it gets easier, but it's like obviously like I don't think like at this point like it's like an everyday thing. But obviously when the anniversary comes, it's like you're starting all over again.
Right.
in a sense.
Yeah.
So now we're gonna move on to some that we called Karma is a Bitch.
Basically, like a mix of
'Cause-
like funny,
Oh,
but
yeah.
also like karma's a bitch.
Yeah. So tough
It's so
scenes.
just satisfying.
Oh
and
no, it is.
Oh yeah, very satisfying. And so obviously the first one is Billy getting struck by lightning in, was it 107?
Yes. He
Yeah,
deserved it.
107.
He was an ass.
Yeah, because it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, he was. Like Billy comes in and then he just wants like the 126.
Mhm.
And like it's like Billy shows up and you're like, what the frick is this guy? Like, what is
Right.
he? Why is he here? And
Yeah.
then like him and Owen having this like thing, like this
Like this
competition.
bromance
And Billy being
kinda.
yeah. Okay, I feel like we don't yeah, I don't know. It's conflicting. It's always conflicting. But then like Billy just being a complete jackass and then getting struck by lightning, and you're like, yes.
Which you know what?
That's beautiful.
I admit I liked Billy Burke. So when I was like excited to see him come in the show. The thing was, like at first, he's like explaining like, oh, the reason why, because so what we learn is that Billy had been a member of the 126 and had wanted to be captain, but then he had to take a leave of absence for health reasons, which he then
I thought
shares
he
he had
was the
cancer.
former captain.
No, I don't remember exactly how it was. I don't think he was captain.
According to
I
the
think he
summary.
was
I
it?
don't think I don't
No.
know.
He'd all, because I kept talking about he always wanted to be the captain of the 126.
See,
And
I looked at the Hulu summary just before we were doing this, and hang on, I'm locating it just so I can verify. Yeah, the episode 6 summary says Owen unexpectedly bonds with the former captain.
Yeah. Okay, like I have a few different ideas about this. Like, yes, he could have been a captain when this happened. He could have also been promoted like before he took
Right.
his leave, and then like, but there had always been like another captain above him, is what I'm
Right.
thinking is why this, because I'm like, it's possible for like two houses to have two captains. Like,
Yeah, because there's
Or
multiple
he
ships.
had to step down because of cancer, so he was on his leave, and there was another
Mhm.
captain
No,
who was
that's
in there
probably
and
what
was the
the
one who got
situation
killed.
was.
Yeah, that's how I
probably
bought
it. Yeah.
I think, yeah, I just think there was always like a different captain, and like the
Mhm.
promotion was later. We really don't
We
know,
don't
but
actually know because we never watched those episodes.
Mm.
None of us really watch those episodes anymore.
Yeah.
oh,
But yeah,
I
so
watched it. Yeah,
well, so what I was kind of getting at was that at first, we you kind of start to feel bad for Billy in a way, because he's sharing, oh, I had cancer. He's like, I beat it, so I'm in remission now. So he's back to being a captain at another station. And so Owen's like, oh, you took a leave of absence to fight cancer. And then Owen shares about his cancer, not knowing that Billy was going to use it against him.
oh
And-
no.
And then all of a sudden, here comes, Billy and Owen, they're button heads because Billy wants the 126. And now he's found a way he thinks he can get it. Because Billy goes to the deputy chief about it. Oh, well, I didn't know that you hadn't told them yet.
Bullshit.
So we all know that's bullshit.
Exactly.
In any case, so that was very satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So then so we have a couple of 911 ones. So here's season 1. We have the guy with the tiger eating this. So is the dentist, supposedly a dentist who'd been caught, I guess, poaching in Africa. And so he was being like caught. And then apparently it had been all over the news, and he'd like lost his, I don't know, practice or whatever. And then he takes his nephews to the zoo, and like they want the tiger to do something so they can take a picture. So he throws a rock at it, which then aggravates the tiger. And then the tiger goes after the guy.
You know what kind of irks me about this scene though? The fact that there wasn't like, yes, like there was like wood or whatever, like whatever you want to call it, high enough up, but there was no netting. I've never been to a zoo
Right.
that had tigers that there is no netting. So this could technically be something that we can call a little bit of bullshit on, because like,
Yeah.
come on, like they're
They
not
should
gonna
have
have
had protective fencing, yeah.
exactly, like that's the one thing that it literally just occurred to me, where I was just like, okay, like I've literally never been to a zoo where the tigers were like this.
Yeah.
Oh
Cats
yeah,
can
there is
jump for
definitely.
sure.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But they would
So
have known that they could have jumped, and so they would have put some
right.
protection. So technically, yeah, that does have some improbability to it.
Yeah.
But it's still Karma's a bitch. And in fact,
Right.
that episode is called Karma's a bitch.
Oh
Yep.
yeah, I forgot about
yeah.
that.
And there were a couple of other things that happened in that episode that was this the same episode that the guy got wrapped up in the car wash brush because he got too close, even though his boss told him not to go too close with the hose?
See, I can't remember. However, I think this was the episode where the guy got burned to death in the sunbed after having
Yeah.
left his dog out to cook in the car.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's
I think
definite
that's it.
karma.
And
That's
Alright.
I
definite
will never
karma.
be more satisfied than with that.
Oh yeah, no, that the one thing that makes me so mad is when people leave their dogs in their cars when it's A, cold outside, or
Mhm.
B,
Hot outside.
hot outside. It makes me so mad. And kids, like, what the heck is
Mhm.
wrong with people?
Well, anybody in general leaving their kid or dog in the car should be, I don't
For
know.
one thing, yeah,
Let me just burn you for a
humidity a thing,
second.
right?
That's what
Yeah,
I have to
really.
say about
Well,
that.
because it could be 70 degrees outside, but the temperature in your car, because it's a metal box, it's gonna heat up. It's gonna be like 100 degrees in there in like 5 minutes.
Also, just generally, taking away natural factors. If you think about it, you leave your kid in the car, especially kid, but this could happen with pet too. Someone might decide they want to take that kid.
Agreed. Like it
So it's
shouldn't.
just stupid.
Yeah.
It's yeah, honestly, very, very dumb.
So, and we don't have it here, but I kind of feel like it's karma's a bitch too. Remember in season 3 when Eddie parks in the handicap to drop Chris off
Oh my gosh.
for the kid, and
How did we forget this?
the guy hobbles over and like bitching at Eddie after Chris leaves about, parking in handicap. He's able bodied. And so Eddie punches him and then like has to get bailed out of jail by Lena. And turns out that the guy had like 9 months ago had been hurt. So he drops charges because he was like going to, sue Eddie for all that. I was like, that's
Even
another
though he was
karma's a
faking
bitch.
his own injury.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like,
Like, you deserve to get punched for that.
No,
Oh, yes.
you did. Like that's the one thing that I like
Because
can't
Eddie,
stand.
yeah, so Eddie had the right to be in that parking spot. He was dropping off his handicapped child at the park with friends, so he had every right to be there legally. And then, was it Lone Star or 911 where the guy aspirates?
That was
Oh, that's a 9-1.
yeah, that was
Okay.
911.
So then there's the episode where they're having a military funeral. Is it a military funeral?
It was a military funeral.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
But
so
it
this
was a guy, I think, who was gay
was
or something.
protesting.
People
And
always protest military funerals and say that like it has to do with like being gay or whatever, and I don't get that 100%. Like, remember a scene in the night shift? We've been referencing that a lot recently, but I just thought of this.
Oh,
and I'm just
Where
saying here like, do,
when
do, do, do.
when Mac died and these people were protesting and like
Oh God, and Drew went off on him. Oh
as he
man.
should.
If
Oh,
I was Rick, I'd have punched him. Well, yeah, Rick was probably pissed at his husband at that time, but
yeah.
I
Yeah.
bet you can figure out my favorite pairing on that series.
Of course. As we should. Okay, I just
Okay.
had to mention
Drew
that
and Rick.
because
Yes.
that reminded me so much of this scene, like because of
Yes.
that. And
Oh
just-
yeah. And I don't know, protesting for any reason is just, especially at a funeral. People are trying to lay their loved ones to rest.
right? Like,
Yeah.
what the hell?
And then this guy is like in trouble and he didn't want anybody to touch him. And then he starts like coughing up. He was literally coughing up his own shit.
oh yeah, yeah.
He aspirated.
Oh yeah,
And it was beautiful. It was disgusting, but it was beautiful just to
Mhm.
see.
Yeah.
Because he was also being a racist shit to everybody there.
Yeah, and I think this was the episode where Athena was on the call and Maddie was on a ride along with her.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, because he was so racist too, because he didn't want Chimney working on him. He didn't want
Oh,
Eddie
that's
to work
right.
on him.
Well, this was beautiful for the fact that he denied both paramedics because they weren't white. And then he Eddie was sent, but Bobby called him Diaz, and he's like, Diaz, what kind of a name is that? And he's like, well, my mother's Swedish, my dad's Mexican. I can treat you with the Spanish half, except I don't know what half that is.
Right. I love
Or the
that line.
Swedish.
That was
That was
I was so
iconic.
sad.
yes, that was a good Eddie line.
Yeah,
That
and like
that definitely gave like Lady from Lone Star, which we'll be talking about
Yes,
later.
we will get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there. That gave those same vibes though.
Oh yeah, no, but like the last thing for this one, like the one thing that also like kind of irritates me about the scene is the fact that like the guy also has his son protesting with him, and that just makes me like,
Okay.
this kid doesn't know what the heck he's protesting for. That's
Right.
why it makes me so mad, because parents just teach their kids these like
Yeah.
disgusting beliefs.
They never
And
give
so
them a chance to figure out themselves and what they
exactly.
believe. And that's what's
Exactly.
irritating.
Exactly.
It's like, let your kids figure it out.
Yeah, kids are
Uh-huh.
so huge sponges. And it's like
Mhm.
you teach them the wrong thing, that's all they're gonna know, which is
Yeah.
not like that's not right. Period.
No.
And that's why we
Exactly.
still have so many issues today.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
It's passed on.
And then also in 911 we have the neighborhood lady who's like calling them when they're having a block party out on the road because they're in the middle of a pandemic. So she calls complaining about them shooting off guns. They never had water guns. Like seriously? Yeah.
Not to mention, like, who cares what they're doing? Like who cares? Mind your own business. My mom always says, like, the only person you gotta police is yourself.
Right.
Ain't wrong.
Yeah. And then, you know, the reason why this is karma is because she's been calling the cops on all these people doing legitimate legal things, but she's like
And
irritated by them
blackmailing.
and blackmailing them. And then all
And
of a
she
sudden,
poisoned the dog.
that's
Oh,
right.
the
She did do that.
corgi. I love corgis. That's why I had
And
to
then
say that.
while she's on the phone with 911 with May, somebody actually shoots the gal. It's like karma's a bitch because like somebody actually came in and like it was almost
Well,
like crying wolf in a way because like they almost didn't want to believe her.
yeah. Well, yeah,
Mhm.
she had shot herself. Is what's
Because the
ironic about the
dog
whole thing.
startled her.
Right.
And it's so beautiful. I'm just here grinning like a slightly creepy maniac because I'm
I
just like,
mean, same.
hey, if people do terrible things, but especially when you hurt animals, you deserve everything that happens to you.
Yep. Yep. Everything you do to that animal, it's due to you.
Mm-hmm.
I hate anybody I hear that has abused animals. I just like, seriously, animals are like given to us to be creatures on this earth, just like we were.
Exactly. As someone that adopted an abused animal and
Mhm.
had psychological issues, so she didn't live very long, that really pisses me off when people literally abuse their animals. Like that, there's a special place for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Special corner of hell. And it's real toasty down there. Hmm. Yep.
And our next 911 is the Porch Pirate Lady, who was in a few different episodes.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
because
She got caught and she like sprained her, like broke her leg or something on somebody's property.
Oh, yeah,
I
when
think
she
that was
was
actually the original Karma's a Bitch episode.
She might have been.
Yeah.
And then she came again in season 2.
Yeah, the next. And she was like, and she decided to stop being on people's properties. So she just started being in like public parking lots and pretending like somebody hit her.
Oh yeah,
And then somebody actually did hit her.
Yeah, and like
It was-
before that, it was like the food court scene where she like had like poured something on the floor and
Oh
then
yeah,
like,
she spilled
tripped on
ketchup
it.
and
Yeah,
and
that's
pretended like
claimed negligence.
yeah.
Mhm.
So it was insurance fraud, and then so then she finally does get hit by like a vehicle because
And that was so satisfying.
yes. Yeah, and then Athena, like when she responds to the call, she's like, "Oh, I know her."
Yeah, and she's just there like, no, you don't. And it's like, yes, we do.
She's like, you upgraded from porch pirate to insurance fraud. Okay.
Didn't
Yeah.
Chimney say something like, "Oh, I
I never forget a femur.
yeah, exactly what I was." Yes,
I'm
yeah,
just there like,
such a good line.
Right. And then the boys in 306 of 911, where the boys are taunting the crows that they were told not to do on their school field trip.
like throwing
And-
rocks at them and stuff. And then they get attacked by the crows. And I'm just there like, ha!
What did you think was gonna happen?
I know, right?
Like, I don't like birds like the next person, but like, I would never do something like that. Mainly because I'm too terrified.
You
But
don't
also-
aggravate them if you're already scared of them.
exactly. Like, I would never do that to an animal, even if I didn't like them in general. Like, that's just not
Yeah.
something I would do, even as like a kid.
The only time I've ever like gone after an animal has been like in defense of another animal. So let's say
Right.
I was chasing off a snake with a shovel because they were going after the baby chicks. That kind
Right.
of thing.
That
Farm
makes
girl life.
sense.
But like I really it breaks my heart to see an animal hurt. I can't hurt them. So no, you don't do that. Even when I was scaring off birds, all you need to do to scare them off, if you really have a legit reason to scare them off, is wave your arms a bit and to get them spooked.
Oh yeah, they're
That's all
more
you need
afraid
to
of.
do.
Yeah,
You
they're
don't need
more.
to throw anything at them. You don't need to shoot at them. You don't need to do any of that.
No,
You just
they're.
get them real scared and they're gonna run.
Oh yeah, they're more afraid of like you than you are of them.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't list it, and I know we talked about it, and we don't have to go into it because it is a tough scene to talk about, but the sad scene about the horse having to be put down, the police horse in 911. That was a tough one. Just, he was spooked and fell and broke his leg and
He had to be put down.
had to be put
I've
down.
watched that once. I've never been able to watch it since.
Yeah. So again, the horse was doing nothing wrong except doing his job, and then got hurt because of people were panicking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was definitely added to the sad scene list. But so let's move on to something a little lighter. And like, let's go to some funny scenes because like I need some like happiness right now.
We had
so-
fun pulling these together.
Oh yeah.
though.
So honestly, like the racist woman in 102 of Lone Star could honestly be in the Karma's a Bitch as well,
I was just
Oh, yes.
thinking that
because she keeps calling on the neighbors, which are Mexican, and she's a white lady. And so she's constantly like trying to come up with some reason why they need to get arrested or deported.
Mhm.
And so she finally calls 911 because there's a fire. So the fire department, so the 126 shows up, and it's the guy in the backyard. And I think Judd said like, "Oh, that's the best smelling fire I've ever heard." These guys are cooking pork in a pit in their backyard, in their own
Mhm.
backyard, have every right to do it. And then like the guy comes over and like talking about how this crazy lady, she's like, "I'm not crazy." He's like, "Oh, that's what you he said the crazy racist lady." And she's like, "I'm not crazy." And he's like, "Oh, that's what you pick out of that?"
Well, no, she was like, I'm not racist. My gardener is Spanish.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm
that
just
too.
like,
Point
that does not mean
proven.
a damn thing.
Yeah. And
That,
then
in fact, you probably think that's the only job they're good for. Because unfortunately, I've met a lot of people who think along those lines.
right, she's
Oh.
like, and what does she say? Like, calls the police or something like. And he's like, "You know what? We don't even have to do that. I'm gonna make a citizen's arrest." And she's like,
It's like,
so
"Oh,
she's like,
good."
and he's like, "Put your hands
Put your
behind
hands
your back.
behind your back. And she's
TK,
like,
get the handcuffs." He's like, "We don't have handcuffs." She's like, "Me." He's like, "You do realize that it's illegal to make a false 911 call, right?"
And Marjan's
She's
having fun with this because the ladies refuse to acknowledge Marjan. And she's like, we can figure out something with some zip ties.
Yeah, well, remember she like the best part of the scene is when she fakes to like basically have a
fakes
heart attack.
attack.
And so she won't like so Owen kind of like is like,
She's
"Oh,
like,
Marjan,
"You can treat me."
Yeah, no, Marjan, give her like mouth to mouth, and she's like, "Oh no," and then it's like, "Oh, like," and he's like, "Oh,
like,
I'm a homosexual."
Yeah.
It's
The
like,
iconic
oh.
line.
And then
Like,
Oh,
she
yeah.
is like, Owen, can't you do it? He's like, not certified.
not certified. And then she looks at Judd, and Judd's like, "No."
Nope.
Just like flat out no.
George.
And then
Just
she's like, she points to Paul.
like,
I love
it. And then
she's like,
"I'm
see,
not
I'm not
racist."
racist.
And he
then-
goes down and she's like, sorry, I have to do this. Not a homosexual, are you? And he's like, oh,
Like,
no, ma'am.
no, ma'am.
But I am
But I'm
trans. though."
trans.
And she
She's
just
like,
snatches her hands back and goes, take me to
take me
jail.
to jail.
This is like this
Loved
is a scene
it.
I actually would like. At the time I watched it over and over, and I still would. It's just so good how
Yes.
it's portrayed, especially like on like the 126's part mostly.
Mhm.
Like it's so good.
It's funny because at first, like, TK's like, oh, we can't take her to the hospital if she's having a heart attack. And then he's watching, and you just see the realization across his face of, oh, that's what's happening.
Yeah, and then what I would have loved is like to actually have a Latino cop come and arrest her. Would have been hilarious.
Where was
We should've had
Carlos?
Carlos.
I know Carlos should have been there. That would have been hilarious.
I would have loved to see like them bring her in and Carlos being like, "Oh dear Lord."
Yeah.
Right.
Imagine that he's already had to attend some of her calls before.
Oh
He's just like,
gosh,
oh,
yeah.
you again.
I wouldn't mind like her coming back just to have like a revisit and like them being
Oh,
like, "Oh
yeah.
God, not you again."
Oh,
Right.
yes.
I would love that. Love that.
But yes, that was literally prime Karma's a bitch and funniest episode.
Yes, that
Mhm.
was like,
It's great.
yeah. And she's like, and I think the guy, like the neighbor guy, was like, when she finally like got like was being told she was getting arrested, he's like, boom, or something like.
He just like boom takes a sip out of his beer can, and I'm just like, yo, that has the same energy as like a mic drop, like boom.
Yeah, because she was saying things like, well, they were waving sticks, they were dangerous or whatever. He goes, we were hitting a pinata. Well, I didn't know that.
Well, no, so what happened was sorry, I have this dialogue memorized.
Oh, me too.
I'm just he's like called the cops last week on my daughter's 10th birthday, and she's like, they were waving around sticks. He's like, at a pinata, you twisted vieja.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm just like, yes.
I think vieja is witch Spanish. I don't know. Don't quote me on that.
Feeling
I looked it up and like when this episode aired, I think it was something else.
Yeah, it's probably some
if I knew how
derogatory
it was
term.
spelled, I would look it up, but I don't know how it's spelled. So
And then so along with 911 Lone Star. So I just have to say that the Lone Star writers were like spot on in the first few episodes, because this other scene is in that first episode. It's the Carolina Reaper Pepper.
gosh, where
That
it
was funny.
switched around.
And in a way it was kind of a karma too, because like, so the guy was trying to play a trick on his friend, and then like the friend switched the plates again.
And so he got it.
So he
and
got
then almost died.
and then almost died.
But that's beside the
Yeah.
point.
Like the one thing with the scene is like it's just like I don't know, I feel like they're both like pranksters, so they keep trying to get back at each other, then like the friend just
Mhm.
switches it, which messes the whole thing up.
Right.
And like
I think
would
they just keep trying to
never-
one up each other.
Yeah,
And
no,
you know,
that's
when
the
you're trying to
thing.
one up on something, it gets worse and worse and
Right.
dangerous
Yeah.
and dangerous.
Yeah. I
So
would never try a Carolina Reaper Pepper.
Oh God, no. I won't
Oh,
even
I
go
don't
near
know.
a habanero.
I can't
I cannot handle spicy.
I can't
okay.
either.
So
I don't like spicy. Like I'm terrified every time I try something spicy. Like we have this tomato oil at work, and I neglected trying it because people would be like, "Oh, it's a little spicy," and I'm like, "A little." So I finally tried it, and I'm like, "Oh, this is nothing. This is nothing. I can handle this."
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm more looking to try anything having to do with spice. Just simply, I know I have a Hispanic heritage in me, but I don't think it's the same thing because it's Spain Spanish. So I
Right.
don't think we have the same kind of spices. Or I'm
Right.
just a wimp.
Yeah,
I'm
like
just a wimp. I think I'm just a wimp.
my whole family loves spicy, and then here I am where I can hardly handle it. Like I literally am such a baby. Like what the
Yeah,
heck?
we're in solidarity.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. My stomach does. I like spicy food. I just can't eat it as much as I want to.
That happens too, yeah.
Yeah. So in 911, we have the Dosed episode, which there were some issues with this one though, because some of the things we did, yeah. But not, I mean, Taylor, yeah, but like the way she acted with Bobby, and so like that, we're not talking about funny, because I think the main one we were talking about is primarily like when Buck and Eddie and Chim and Hen show up to the little girl pageant, and that whole scene, and like Athena's reaction to it, and Chim not being dosed, and the
Because
others.
he arrived too late to get any of the brownies, which
Yeah.
were what were dosed.
Yeah.
And so, as Athena says, y'all been tripping? Because they're all tripping. Eddie's terrified of the beauty pageant queen.
That's
And
like,
then
are
cries when
we
he's put in
either that
handcuffs.
or we're giant? Or is it, what did Buck say?
Oh,
Right.
he's like, have beauty pageant models like shrunk, or are we suddenly giants? And then it just goes, he
Yeah.
just slides back a little bit, like, I'm so scared. And then
Yeah.
he's crying when he's put the handcuffs, and
Right.
Buck's just like, ooh, you made him
it
cry.
That was another, I think, kind of early buddy
Oh
comment.
yeah, totally. But no, it's just funny.
Yeah, and it turned out that like some crazy lady spiked the brownies and took them there, and so yeah. But I think that was like
LSD or something.
yeah,
got
that
put
was
in
like
there.
the funniest scene of it. Because like we see all of them reacting differently, and I think when they got there, Athena's like, "Y'all tripping?" And then like I think Hen said something to Athena, and she's like, "Oh really?"
Oh no, it was Athena, your head's beating like your heart. And she's like, is it?
That's it. That's it.
That's so funny.
Oh
like,
my gosh. Athena was just like, she's like, what the hell's going on with y'all?
And then Hannah was like, Athena, you smell like love. We were just dying.
And I think because they were in like at the beginning part of it, when they were in the like little pageant room, and like Chip's like trying to help the person they were called about, and then like he calls for help, and like Buck and Eddie are just kind of standing there in this little dazed look, and Athena's like, I think they're calling you,
and they're like, oh, you exist. And then one or the other of them, I think it's Jim, goes, oh yeah, Jim. He's like, do you guys know where you are? And I just hears from behind balloons going, we're everywhere, man.
Yes, that was when Athena calls Chim over, and she's like, I think there's something wrong with them.
Yeah, like,
oh boy.
Yeah, so that was a good
in case
one.
y'all can't tell, we're having fun with this.
Yes, just why we needed the lightheartedness of it. So then along with Athena mentioned, we also have when Athena got handcuffed to the bed by the guy she was sleeping with, and the keys were across the room.
And she had to call Hen.
And she had to call for
like a
help.
great best friend, is just standing there cackling and not doing a single thing to help.
Yep.
Which I will say is totally neat.
Yep, and takes a selfie, with the situation before she hands over the key.
You know she sends that to the she sends that to the 118 group chat.
She at least sends it to Chim. To be
honest. Oh yeah.
Like, bestie, look.
You're never gonna believe what I just found.
That's because I could totally see that happening.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes. It would.
And then a little Lone Star 201, when Gwen decides to stay, and she and Owen have been sleeping around all episode, or that we know of, and she's like, I think we're gonna have to tell TK. And then TK says, TK already knows. And she's like, what do you know?
Like,
and he goes,
what do you know?
More than any son should. The walls here are not that thick.
It's the fact that I use that line all the time since that episode 2, like in any situation.
Yeah.
Oh yes, and I see. I'm just there, like, he's just casually standing there, sucking a popsicle in a black hoodie, just looking so casual and just like destroying any sense of their privacy.
Yeah.
And they're like, rude.
I was like, what? Well, I still to this day want to know, like, why a lollipop? Like, that's just so random.
Well, it worked for the casualness of it all.
Right.
Yeah, I know, but I want to know why. Like, that was just so random. Like, I guess they had to put something in there, but I feel like there has to be like some random like reason.
I think the only thing that really would have worked is like he was just looking at his phone, like glanced up and then just like looked back. Just because
Right.
I can see it having the same effect. But other than that,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think so. A hope is that we can get the opposite at some point. Owen saying that to TK.
The only
Mhm.
way that would have worked is like if TK and Carlos were still like oh wait, I just thought of it. Well, what I was gonna say is like the only way that would have worked is like if they were still living with him. But another way where I could see this somehow working is if like they're back together and like TK and Carlos living together, and then like Owen has to come stay with them for whatever reason.
Right.
And like him saying like that's TK, that would be perfect. Like, can we
Or
have this happen?
or something that I feel like they could manage is he comes in, like they're back together, they're living together, and he has to come drop something off or pick something up. And he arrives and they don't know he's arrived, but he can just hear them and he's like,
Yeah. He's like,
That's
just,
out.
or TK is living with Owen again. I don't know where he's living right now. Anyways, and
Imagine he's crashing on Nancy's couch.
Owen doesn't know that they're back together, and so he hears something going on, not realizing Carlos is there. Yeah.
Carlos comes over for some TK time is all I have.
Mhm.
Well, I
This
mean,
is gonna
TK
be
is
great.
going to be recuperating. I am curious about that. I wonder where TK is living.
I think it's pretty. I don't know. Like to me, I think that he's well. Owen's not there currently, so I think he's just
Right.
living there, and Mateo's living there too. I think they're
Yeah.
just
Possible.
And Owen just
Yeah.
looks, see ya, and runs off.
Right.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
so yes, that concludes our funniest scenes. But there are so many. It was hard to choose some.
Yeah. And there's so many more funny scenes. And like there's a ton in Jinxed.
Jinx itself.
Right.
Jinx
Let's
itself is a funniest scene.
Jinx
I
is
think
funny.
the
And even like the Hildy stuff and What's Your Grievance?
Oh, now what's your grievance? Future tense.
Future tense. Okay.
Yeah. But yes, that too.
Yeah.
So
There's a
future tense
lot. Yes.
and Jinx. We're just gonna
Ugh.
leave those as the funniest.
Those were gold.
oh yeah.
Your reward material.
Yes. So well done, writers of Lone Star and 911. So we're going to talk about a couple of the best rescues. So we think these are actually so we have some best rescues and ones that could be a little bit better, but we don't have a lot on either one just because there's a lot. And
Yeah.
I think we can all in different ways pick apart a lot of them because we know that it's a TV show. So we know that not everything is going to be exactly how it would be in real life.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And like also like it's not like they just make up these calls on their own. They have
Right.
like advisors that they get these from, but obviously for TV purposes they have to shorten them. So
Yeah.
they can't just make calls like 5 hours long. That's just not realistic.
Right.
And
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like one of them is the baby rescue in Lone Star episode 101, the pilot, when Owen goes up in the tree and rescues the baby that had flown out of the car. I thought that was really cool. Like, the mom had swerved and like crashed, and like somehow the baby's whole car seat was ejected from the car and flew up into a tree.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a little, yeah, that was a good one. And then delivering the baby in Lone Star 109, that was interesting. And I love how Jed was in charge at that time, and he's like, well, everybody go get stuff for Marjan, and she's like, I have to do it, and he goes, well, you're trained, aren't you?
Yeah. 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 What's also great at that scene is like seeing Judd acting as a captain. Like he just does such a good job. And this is one of those moments where you're like, okay, like if he's given the opportunity to be a captain, he'd be a really great one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I fully see him moving in that direction at some point. Like he'd be a damn good captain.
Yeah.
And as now he's like Owen's second in command. which is
Right.
good, A, because of experience, B, he's good at the job. So yes,
Yeah.
we see him rocking that. But I completely actually forgot about them delivering that baby until now.
Really?
I completely forgot that happened. But also, I don't tend to watch episode 9 a lot. I've only actually watched it a few times.
Yeah, there's no Carlos in it, so I don't need to watch it.
Um,
Yeah, the only
Like-
thing in 109 I like is what is Owen's saying something like, "What's up with Zoe?" And he goes, "Well, I'll tell you about that when you tell me how long you've been seeing the cop."
The
It's about
cop.
The cop.
Yeah.
Not even
Was-
just like
Was that an
um,
8 or was that a 9? I thought that was
that
an
was a
8.
9.
because it was
okay.
awakening because TK had just woken up.
Right.
Yeah.
I also love how he goes to see the kid. That's
Yeah.
part of 9. So I love the episode. I just don't watch it a lot. So I actually forgot the baby happened.
I love how
It was
you
like-
said that, but I'm like, you guys are like, well, yeah, Carlos isn't in an episode, so it's put in watching it, and I'm like, TK.
Well, I love
True.
TK, but like when there's no
We give
Tarlos,
him
it's
plenty
just
of
like
time.
There was
just skip
hardly
over-
any Tarlos in season 1, so I can't like
True,
really
because they were
justify
still
it.
true. Well, and
struggling.
like I personally I liked the corn silo rescue. I thought that was cool. I thought that was one of the best scenes.
Oh yeah,
And it was a good rescue, and like it totally like fit the being in Texas, things that happen. My dad grew up on a farm, so I'm sure there were plenty of stories he had about that. And they
We
have
used
a
to
lot
have-
of great rescues in these shows.
We used to have corn cribs on the farm. Actually, we still have corn cribs on the farm I grew up on, where you didn't put like the kernels of corn in there, but you put the entire cobs. But they were long out of use by the time I was growing up. In fact, my sisters and I used them as like playhouses. We'd like set up houses, and it was great actually. There was one that was like wide open, and there was one that was like really covered in ivy and stuff. So it was a lot of fun to play with, but they were way out of use by the time I came along.
Yeah.
yeah.
In fact, I don't think they were in use when my sisters came along either. So, but yeah, so we had like what we called the corn cribs, but they weren't the same as silos.
Yeah.
And I
And I'm-
think go ahead, Katie.
So like other calls, like 911 calls specifically that were good. I feel like Tsunami, there were a lot of good like rescue type scenes and like that. It's hard to pinpoint 911 ones, but like there were obviously like quite a few good rescue that just
Right.
it's hard to like
What?
remembering all of them.
Yeah. And I think, even some of them, like we've already talked about in like the saddest or the, karma, because some of those are good like calls and scenes too. They just
Really, yeah.
fit in another category. So, though we only have 2 listed for the scene calls that could have been done better.
We only had 2 listed for each, honestly, because it was easier to split them up into the other categories than it was to split them up into this. Though we totally neglected 911 except for one call. Like we had no 911 in the best, and we had them split in half for ones that could have been better, but oh well.
Yeah.
We tried.
Yeah, I mean that's why I tried to add like something kind of like right now because like that obviously there is like good calls. There's good calls in both for a reason. They're both good shows. They try to represent in like the best way
But
possible. Like
I think if we honestly, if we wanted to throw like scenes or episodes in there, we could just throw the earthquake and the tsunami to represent 911, because to me those are some of the best.
oh yeah, 100%.
And I think some of the ice storm has been pretty good too so far of what we've seen.
Oh yeah. I think we can more accurately judge that when we get the second half. But yes, it's been so far very good. So again, it's been hard to wrangle them, but we do have 2 for what could have been better.
The first one is very recent, so spoiler alert. If,
spoiler
y'all
alert.
haven't
If you
seen
have
the
not
early
seen-
new seasons of Lone Star yet.
If you haven't seen the episodes that aired like 2 to 3 weeks ago,
Yeah.
then
Yeah. Heads
Black
up.
Curious?
Yeah. So in The Boy in the Ice, so the kid had asthma. He fell into the ice, and we know there was at least 10 to 15 minutes between the time that he was found and the time he was rescued. he would have been dead long before TK pulled him out of the water. Just saying.
Oh, most definitely. He was in the
There-
middle of an asthmatic attack. He didn't just
Yep.
have asthma. He was in the middle of an asthmatic
Yep.
attack when he went under. It was who knows how long later,
Yep.
but definitely at least maybe 5 to 10 minutes before he was even found. 5
Right.
minutes for the woman to call, another 10, maybe 15 minutes before rescue could get out, and then if
Yep.
they figure in another 5 or 10 minutes before they could even get out onto the ice.
Yeah.
And rescue him. That kid would have been dead before he was found.
Yeah.
So the fact that he was alive
Right.
and likely without any permanent brain damage
Yeah.
is completely illogical.
And the fact that the ice was like iced back over, that takes hours or days to just ice back over.
The only thing I can figure out with that is that he had been drifted away from the opening of the ice.
That's what I thought too, is he might have drifted.
But that it's still, we don't really see him. We see him go down. We don't see him go away.
Yeah. So we don't.
So that that just
like,
doesn't have those temperatures. It's completely illogical for a dead person over. So they can get
yes.
away with saying he drifted away, but also he should have been able to try and fight it. At least we should have seen him clawing at the opening
Right.
before he'd done that.
'Cause
So that
he didn't hit his head.
no.
So
He just
when he
plummeted.
would have went down, I think what my issue is too is that I'm sorry, the temperature is not going to get down to like enough to where the lake is going to freeze over that quickly in Texas. Like even if they get snow, it's not going to get like
I don't know if it could even do that in North America, period. I'm not sure if those temperatures are,
I mean, that's
for that
it's
speed.
common in Canada, and like, I mean, you
Fair.
can ice fish in Minnesota, so it's possible.
And maybe even Alaska. Like maybe those, I'm saying for the ice to freeze back over that quickly.
Right.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure those are those temperatures in this continent, or at least definitely not in America,
Right.
like the US.
Yeah. Well, not me being like, yeah, I've definitely seen that in real life because I'm from New York and it gets very frigid here, as I've mentioned.
Right.
But like, I think for freezing, it has to be at least under like 30. So it could freeze over, and I'm sure the temperatures were like at least under 30. And it wouldn't be hard for a lake to freeze over during this. Like, I think it's definitely possible. But just the fact that like ice, you can see the ice reforming, that was a little much. Like,
Well,
come on.
And
like
it still should have been weak enough that he could have punched through. So yeah, it's
there were a lot of logistics that were thrown. The rescue was good, but
it's for me, it's completely spoiled because how illogical it is. My brain is just there going like, what the heck are you doing?
Yeah.
So I have trouble enjoying it simply for the fact that I cannot look past such glaring inaccuracies, but it was a good rescue.
Yeah, I think like like here in Washington, it gets cold. Like we just had here a couple weeks ago, had a really nasty cold snap where it was like in the teens and 20s for quite several days. But even then, ponds only started to get a little bit of ice glossed over. Like it takes a long time for there to be ice thick enough to walk on. So I think that was what got me, as like, seriously, like they've only had like a week or two of like cold temperatures. You're not going to have like a completely frozen over ice sheet of ice on the lakes safe enough to walk on. Which in that case, the kid's not going to know that. He's just going to see ice and like, oh, let's go play hockey.
But not even that, because the people collecting turtles were out on the ice.
Yeah.
And those are full-grown adults.
Yeah.
Not 10-year-old boys or however old that kid was.
But where he was, wasn't there like snow over the lake? Because I didn't even realize it was a lake.
I think there was some.
Yeah. What it reminds me of is like a little pond in like a neighborhood. Like sometimes they'll have like a drainage pond or like a small like park, and there might be like a little duck pond or something, is what I kind of envision that being.
That's what I
That's
think
about
it
what I thought.
was.
Especially because TK made a comment about, doing a lot of rescues like that in Central Park, and they have a lot of ponds and stuff in Central Park.
Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I think for me that was like the biggest, like the most standout more recently. I can't think of, I mean, there's quite a few. And like I know we mentioned here too in 911, in the Christmas episode, I think in season 3, when the girl is like totally blue.
Oh yeah, because
Um,
she's using that toothache medicine like by the
Yeah.
bucketful, so to speak,
mhm.
and it what does it do? Like deplete the iron in her blood or something, making her completely blue. I forget exactly what it does.
Yeah, it was just the fact that she was like
Or it's
Smurf
killing
blue.
off the red blood cells or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah,
Her whole body was like Smurf blue. Yeah, that was crazy.
that was just like, okay, that's one scene like anybody can pick out and be like, okay, that's like kind of like this other scene. It's kind of a little bit much because yes, you will like get like a blue tint, but it's more like a light gray blue, not like Smurf blue. Like it looked like she just painted her whole body.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why
It,
I like wrote that down. I was like, okay, that's a little like that's just pushing it. Like
it didn't have as many glaring inaccuracies simply because they were kind of sticking to like one inaccuracy, but it was a like extreme inaccuracy
Right.
just because it's like, okay, you should not humanly be that blue.
Right. Yeah, and there's, a couple of them, like I was thinking about in season 2, 911, when they're at that fire, at that gas fire at this like housing neighborhood, and Eddie climbs up outside the house, goes inside, and there's like an open front door. So like, why did he climb in? And then like how the truck, the ladder, like the collapsed. I'm like, seriously, like if
I
it
know what
can't
you're
stand a
talking
little
about.
heat, like that seemed a little unrealistic that would happen. But I get like it was the point of the drama was like that Buck wasn't able to get to him.
No, I don't think it was heat though. I think it was just something was wrong with the ladder. I never thought it was like heat. I think there was just a mechanical dysfunction.
Yeah.
And the reason I thought that like he wasn't going in through the front was A, there was open flame, B, the boy was on the second floor, and so he could be trapped from going up to get him.
Yeah, and then what was the other one? There was a couple others I was thinking of, and I can't think of them right now.
Yeah.
There were definitely some. Like I can't think
Yeah.
of any either, but there are definitely a lot that, you're stretching it.
Yeah.
Which
Honestly, if we want to talk about accidents where probably shouldn't have made it out alive, if we're thinking about it, that pile up, what is it, 409? The episode where Maddie gives birth to the baby, where the pileup happens that Albert's part of.
Uh-huh.
But like the woman drunk driving wrong way on the freeway causes huge pileup, but she barely gets out without a scratch, even though the whole thing is basically compacted.
Yeah.
Which granted, when you're drunk, your body reacts differently. So there have literally been documented cases of many drunk drivers killing somebody but getting out without a scratch.
Oh yeah. And it sucks.
But also the child in the back, I'm glad he lived, but that like
Yeah.
probability speaking, he probably shouldn't have made it out either.
Yeah.
Albert probably shouldn't have made it out. Like,
yeah,
if we want to
definitely.
document how many people should have actually died, that's a very long list.
Okay. Yeah. I don't mean to backtrack, but I literally just thought of rescue that should be on best rescues from 911. When the ladder truck the ladder truck crushed Buck and like their lift civilians are coming to help. That's a really good rescue that I just
Oh my
remembered.
gosh, yes.
Like I can't believe I forgot about that. But
I
like,
know that. No, yeah, that's a good one. And it was just the fact that like they were watching people, like people were watching the fact that like all the firefighters couldn't lift the truck, and then like well, we'll have to call in help, and then all of a sudden like these people just run over. I think that was like super powerful.
Oh, it was quite powerful.
And
yeah.
then one thing I was thinking for like could have been better. So like in Lone Star, I think it was 106 or 7. It's the one where the lift is smushed underneath a semi truck and the driver's pinned and she's losing a lot of blood. so they have to do an in-field blood transfusion. That would never
Oh,
happen.
right. Where the
Two
where
girls,
like the
one,
childhood friends
yeah,
reunited, that kind of thing. Yeah, I
that
remember.
was very. I think that could have been done a little differently because
Yeah.
because that, like, you don't do a blood transfusion blood to blood like that directly in the field unless you're
I
like
don't
in a
even
war
think
zone.
that the paramedics are authorized to do that.
No,
I could be wrong. I don't actually know, but I
I
don't
don't
think
think
that's what
so.
they.
That has to be done in like a sterile environment. Now I know
Because
the
that's
reason
super
why
risky.
military guys, like soldiers and stuff, they wear a patch with their blood type on it for the
Mhm.
specific reason that if you're in a war zone, and they need like a certain blood type because they're like short on it in the hospitals, like they'll call anybody with like a positive blood type, please come and give blood, or and they may do stuff, but that's even still like that's in a more sterile environment than in the on the road in the middle
Also,
of an
field
accident
medics
scene.
have more authorization than
Yeah, so Eddie could have done it, I think, like because
depends on
him
what his
being combat
certification is
medic.
outside of the field. Sorry, I'm like picking holes in everything. I don't mean to do that, but
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
like,
Well,
I do know a little because I do know a former field medic, and I do think that they have to have like special authorization to be able to use those skills outside of
Mhm.
combat, but
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it has to do with like once you like I have heard that when you're a combat medic and you come out of the military and you want to get a job as a civilian, you basically have to get all the licenses as civilian anyways, because your licensing in the military is different.
Hmm.
And the military will usually help you get like transitional licensing to get out of, go into civilian work.
I think the one last thing to say about the blood to blood transfer is like in that episode, like Michelle had said how risky it was and like how they probably shouldn't do that. But
Yeah.
also like I don't call like major bullshit on it just because I've seen it done so many times where it's just like okay.
The show's always going to stretch, but we're
Oh
here to
yeah.
poke holes in it just because fun.
It's
Um,
Yeah, it
Mhm.
is. It is. And like I think the reason why we don't have like a ton of stuff is because they actually like unlike other shows, they actually do a good job is trying to make it as accurate as possible
Right.
mhm.
and
I
stuff.
agree.
It's not like oh we like even with the ones we do have, it's not super blatantly like ridiculous. Like some of them
Yeah.
can be like a little much, but like they're still good like at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
Right. And the thing is, it's entertaining. And that's like, we're not going to just say like it was the worst scene or the worst rescue because it's not.
Mhm.
Yes, there are some things that could have been done better or differently to make it maybe seem a little more realistic or make it a little more realistic than what, the far-fetched thing they did. But, all in all, I think the writers are really doing well. And I know that they talk with a lot of experts and former first
Yeah.
responders to,
Well, they
when they do write certain scenes, so they're not just pulling stuff out of the sky.
Yeah, well, they probably have like some type of technical advisor that was either
Mm-hmm.
a former firefighter, paramedic, what be it. Like they get these from like somewhere. Like they don't just
Right.
think about them themselves.
Oh, but then I think they like consult to be like, okay, how can we make this seem not as ridiculous as it seems?
Yeah,
Right.
well, I think like some of the things they probably think of a scenario they want to do and then they kind of fact check it to make it like not as ridiculous. But like
Mm-hmm.
then there's those other calls that like
Yeah.
probably they get from these people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we talked quite a bit. So let's talk about some of the feel good scenes.
Oh yes.
Like when we were talking about this when we were planning this episode and we were like feel good and it was like me being like every Tarlos scene pretty much.
Yeah, I was thinking of
Which yep,
that too.
every Tarlos and Buddy scene,
Oh yeah, Buddy too, yes. But
even
like
though I'm not sure that counts because it's not official yet. But
Mm,
yet keyword, yeah. um But like the ones that really stand out, like Carlos and 208 after like Owen and Carlos show up to rescue like TK, Tommy, and Nancy, but like, you know, focus on TK, like the one that mainly needs rescuing, and then like Carlos just like going over to him and like basically holding him up because he's not doing well. Not his worst, but not the best.
He needed somebody to lean on, and he got to lean on TK or Carlos.
Yeah.
Another good one is when Eddie tells Buck about his will being changed at the end of season 4.
Yeah, that's so good because we're just like, oh my god, that's like total buddy, because like, okay, like obviously Eddie's not gonna have his parents take Chris. He's gonna have his you know,
love his life.
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, lover.
Gonna have his boy take care of him, and I'm just like, yes.
So,
we all know that's good choice.
No, it's especially good because you know how attached like Chris is to Buck.
Right.
Like Buck is basically like his second dad.
Yeah, truly.
They're pretty much co-parenting.
Okay,
yes, they are.
When Buck gets like kind of like worried about Chris going off to summer camp, and he's very
more than
worried.
Eddie is even.
Yeah. Well, what I mean is, like, when Buck gets that, like, worried about it, he goes from being, like, when people see him as the friend, he goes from that to being, like, the second dad, like, co-parent. Yes. If you don't see it, you better see it then.
Right.
Yes.
And then, back to Lone Star, when Buttercup joined the 126.
Yes. The moment.
And honestly, like, most Buttercup scenes are, like, freaking awesome.
Yes. Like, anytime Buttercup, even if he's in the background of a scene, I'm just like, oh, this is so good. Like, I love Buttercup, and this is me just reconfirming that Ben needs an Instagram.
Yes. Can we like reach out to Ronan and Rafa and be like, dude, can you guys like make sure this happens?
Yeah.
I know. I want to start a petition for it. Like, I've been literally thinking about it for days. No, not even days, weeks. Like, you know, if like I actually started a petition, people would be like, yes.
And it's so crazy because like there's so many Bernese Mountain Dogs out there. Like, of course we need Ben. Like, he's like a star.
Yeah.
He is a star.
Like, no, he's the main character, and nothing will change that.
Can we get his autograph at some point?
A autograph.
Forget that. I just want a picture of him.
Can we?
I'll settle for a nice warm hug. I mean, he's warm.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Like, can you just picture like meeting the Buttercup? Like, I think I'd be more starstruck than meeting like Ronan in person.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah.
I'd probably
honestly
excited to meet their dogs, honestly.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Spot,
just
fresh.
Picture like a Lone Star convention or something like that. And I hope y'all could tell me why I'm thinking what scene this is making me think of. We're like, oh, hi guys, Buttercup.
That's gonna be us.
Yeah.
Marshawn feels.
Yeah. Hey boy, like barely says hi to Owen, like comes into the dog.
Yes. So back to 911.
So another feel good is 911's when David proposes to Michael. Well, technically Bobby proposed for Michael, but
we can go with that.
I mean, Bobby kind of ruined the surprise, but I still give all the credit to Michael because like it deserves to be to him. It's like his thing, but it was like the most perfect moment, even though it did get spoiled. It almost made it better.
I don't care that it got spoiled, honestly.
I don't know.
I'm not someone who actually cares it got spoiled because I'm like, it kind of, it was sort of needed. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. I was about to say that it made it kind of better that it got spoiled because like you got David out faster almost.
It reminded David that he had a reason to get out and that he had even more of a reason to get out. And like he still did his job, but it is like probably his fingers and
Yeah.
spin up real fast. So we love that.
Yes. And then this is like a feel good scene, but I also feel like it could be seen as a sad scene because, like, of course, I've cried at the scene before about Carlos down to 212, but it's feel good because, like, TK comforting Carlos
Right.
and being there for him, even like,
Because we've always seen it the other way around.
oh yeah, 100%. And
Mhm.
like, just that is a beautiful Carlos scene. That is a beautiful moment. And this is the reason why, like, just reaffirming why I love them so friggin' much.
Right.
Oh yes.
It was super emotional, and it like Rafa's acting in that was amazing, amazing actor anyways, but
He got his time to shine.
yeah, he
Oh
was shining
yes.
well in that. And and you can tell the chemistry that Ronan and Rafa have on and off screen because they work so
Mhm.
well together.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah, like that is why they're like the best pairing. Like, oh, love it.
We look forward to
Mhm.
having them back.
Better be
Yeah.
soon.
But yeah,
Because the Tarlos tag on Archive of Our Own is starting to get a little depressing. Like I don't even want to go look at Tarlos fan fiction because most of it's about the breakup, and I'm like, I need good Tarlos stuff right now. I
okay.
need fix, not the other way around.
Honestly, that's I don't like that because, like, as like somebody writes occasional fan fiction, like I wouldn't write about the breakup. Like I would honestly want to avoid that at all costs. So I don't. That's just like I don't.
Yeah, like I get
Honestly,
some
I
of them are
might
more of a speculation as to why they broke up. I get that, but like I need some like fluffy, like happy stuff right now.
honestly
mean-
I would write it after they got back together.
Oh,
Yeah, me too.
Oh
And
yeah,
we
100%.
knew what happened.
Right.
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
100%. But
Yeah.
people are obviously only doing it now because we have nothing and they kind of want like it to be read. And I feel like if you don't know anything, it's gonna get read. But it's
Yeah.
just like, come on, like we need happiness.
Well,
The
yeah.
problem with that is you have people taking liberties. Like, obviously, fanfiction is a place where people can express themselves. That's fine. But you have people that are kind of, with breakups, you're going to have people that will villainize
Oh yeah, which is what I
one
don't
or
like.
the other of them. And it all depends on who they like more. And what they don't understand is that with breakups, there doesn't have to be a villain. Sometimes it
No.
just, something happens.
Right? Yeah.
But when fanfiction writers villainize somebody, they villainize them hard. And so that's why I'm staying away from stuff right now. Other than the fact that I don't have time.
Yeah.
Well, and I that's too, but I think for me, a lot of it is just, we have what's going on in the show. We don't know why. And I think it's hard too, because episode 1 through 4 is basically like the course of like a week. So we're still like getting the other pieces of the week, in the next couple of episodes. So
Oh yeah.
we know we're going to get more explanation as to why they broke up. And it could have been as simple as like Carlos was struggling to be intimate because of what happened the last time they tried to be intimate, and TK was struggling with something, and maybe they just decided that they weren't going to fight anymore, or maybe they were tired of fighting. I don't know. But yeah, I don't like, not saying that people are villainizing, because I don't feel like that. Like there's some that, yeah, you're leaning more towards X, Y, and Z happening, and this so-and-so like broke up with so-and-so. And I do feel like it was TK's decision to break up, because I don't feel like Carlos would have chosen to do that, because
No.
Carlos
Yeah.
has been fighting for their relationship since the beginning.
Yeah.
You have a slightly more wounded Carlos, just simply because anyway, I think we've already explained why we think that.
Right.
Yeah,
TK
that's
broke up, but
But yeah,
Yeah.
so right now I want the happy, like, feel good right now. So fan fiction writers, could add a little fluff here and there, please?
yes,
Because
please,
we
thank
could
you.
all use it right now.
Thanks.
Thanks.
And then back to 911, one of the other ones we thought of was in the Christmas episode in season 2, when Eddie and the team helped a Marine get to his daughter's recital. He was coming home to surprise her, and he had to stop and help during an accident. So he was covered in blood. And so when Eddie kind of figured out, like, put the pieces together as to what the guy was doing, the 120 or 118 drove him over to the recital so he could get there on time. And so good.
And like Buck, we're all wiping away a tear.
Yeah, because we all love soldier reunions.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, soldier reunions and reunions with their pets when they come back.
Oh
Oh
yeah,
my
those are
god, that
so
always gets
good.
me.
That
Like,
gets me even more than the human reunions.
yeah.
Like when you see
Yeah.
them reunite with their dogs or something,
Oh yeah, and
and I'm just like,
the dogs just go crazy when they see them and they just licking. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, and people
Yeah.
say dogs have no concept of time. I call bullshit on that.
oh bullshit, they're one of the smartest animals.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like they might have a slightly odd sense of time, but even if you're
Well,
just thinking like how old they are in dog years, that kind of thing. But if anything,
yeah.
that means for them, time is stretched out even longer.
Yeah, I don't think it's the time as we think. Like, I don't think they realize like an hour. What it's just like they get familiar with people's voices and certain like reactions, and then when they don't have them, they long for that.
And they
And
probably even know like the scent has faded, the
yeah,
like they're
I think
present.
that's
They
where.
are smart. Yeah.
So yeah,
Anyway, so
so
that
I'm
is
like I'm excited for a TK and Buttercup reunion.
yes,
Speaking of reunions,
we
Oh
need
my
it.
god, yes. Like I can't wait. Like Owen, bring that dog home ASAP.
Yes.
yes, yes,
We
and
miss
yes.
we miss them all being together. Though
Me.
hey, I'm just glad that we've gotten Buttercup content.
Yeah, me too.
The way we were just like, oh yeah, nod to the soldier reunion. Oh, let's talk about that. Okay, Buttercup.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We talked about pet reunions, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'd like to see TK get reunited with Buttercup.
Oh yes.
Um, yeah. So I there are a lot of other good like feel good scenes too. And throughout the series, I love the relationship that Michael and Athena have now since they've been divorced and things like that. So
I just love okay, the proposal. She's just the wing woman.
yeah,
Oh
she
yeah.
is.
Yeah, we definitely talked about that at the time. Like, think how much of the wing woman she was. Like,
And I'm
Right.
yes.
digging it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I would love to have like another feel good would be like having a rescue with a dog or a cat, because like we've had a few in 911, like the one with Oliver and the cat for one. And like the jokes about, like Norman when he came home after filming that scene was like, see me. Sorry, it's the whole.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
honestly.
because that recently there was because of all the snow up here, there was a lot of it melted pretty quickly, so there was a lot of flooding and some mudslides and landslides. And so there was a house, somebody's a family home had slid off the foundation and slid down an embankment, I believe, and both of their dogs were in the house. The family was able to get out, but the dogs weren't. And so for like 5 days, they thought both dogs had passed away. One of the dogs actually survived.
Oh yeah, I saw that. That was so
And so
like
I was like, I would love to have like a thing where like the firefighters are trying to rescue their dog or something.
yeah.
yeah, I would almost like a dog just because like that seems like less stereotypical because obviously like everyone associates like firefighters just saving cats out of trees.
Though we did get that in Jinx.
Oh yeah, we
The cat,
yeah.
and then they had to go save the person that went up after it.
Yeah,
Right,
which
right.
that was funny though. Like they didn't make
That
it
was funny, and it was
stereotypical.
only like a glimpse of their crazy day. But I just love how they did get in fact one getting them out tree.
Right.
No, this honestly, we had so much content to choose from, and this only scraped the surface of all the emergencies
Oh,
that happened in these seasons. But I think for having like slapped this together a few days beforehand, this came together pretty well.
Oh yeah.
And also we slapped some of this together right before we started recording. So
Yeah,
Right.
it
Well,
was definitely like a harder episode to like coordinate just because
Yeah.
we didn't necessarily go back and rewatch because like who has time for that?
right.
that's 7 seasons worth of rewatch.
Yeah.
We
Well,
don't
and I
have
think
that.
and it was kind of unexpected to have a break so soon in Lone Star's return. So it was a little bit of a shock, but
Yeah, I mean we did know a couple weeks ahead of time.
yeah. Yeah, so I enjoyed it. I think we, talked about it again. Like we said, we'll definitely talk about these kind of things again. So if there's one that we didn't mention that you really feel is like super passionate about, let us know. You
Oh
can
yes,
always
we love
message
hearing
us,
y'all's thoughts.
and yeah, we also have the Discord server, so you can come scream at us on there if you want. We can like have chats. We'll have chats once in a while.
And hey, drop your own episode suggestions on. Right
Yeah.
now we're taking care of Lone Star, but when we have a break week, we need content ideas. So
Yeah.
drop your own episode suggestions. Yeah.
Yeah, we'd love to hear them.
Exactly.
In other words, go to our Discord.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, it's free.
Yeah, exactly.
Valid point.
And like we do chat on their occasion, but it's not crazy overwhelmed, so you're not going to get overwhelmed with notifications. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for joining us and listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Anchor. We're also on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, and almost anywhere you can find podcasts. On iTunes, please rate us and leave us a review. It would mean a lot to us. You guys can follow the podcast on our socials at 911LS Roundup on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our Discord server link is in the description of the podcast and also on our Instagram bio.
You guys can follow me, Katie, at ForLoveTarlos on Instagram and at ForLoveTarlos on Twitter.
you guys can follow me, Grace, at RonanRatha911 on Instagram and at SheepGirl31 on Twitter.
You can follow me, EJ, at EJ8302 on Instagram and Twitter.
Bye.
Bye.